and welcome to this week's edition of the Collection Comic of the Week. The book I have chosen this week is Venom. Separation Anxiety Issue 1, or Part 1 of 4. It was kind of weird with Venom back when he was getting his own book published. He never didn't have like a complete ongoing series per se, but he would have like a bunch of small story arcs that were broken up into their own series. It would be like Venom, Separation Anxiety 1, or Venom, Lethal Protector, number 1. You know, be 1 of 4 for Separation Anxiety, 1 of 6 for Lethal Protector, and that was just kind of how they were doing Venom comics in the 90s, and it's actually a concept I don't mind. It's something that I'd like to see a little bit more of, especially now in the day that both companies are just rebooting and rebranding and starting from issue 1 on a whim and then go, no, we're going to start again from the, as part of Rebirth or Legacy or whatever. We're going to start from the original numbering. No, we're going to go back to number 1 again. I kind of just wish they'd do something like this, where it's like, hey, here's the story arc. Here's 1 of 12 for this story. Okay, great. Here's 1 of 6 for the next story. But enough of my commentary on the comic book industry today. This is there's a lot that kind of went into me finding this book. Well, not necessarily finding the book, but my knowledge of the book. I acquired this book and the whole series from a friend of mine who was just downsizing his comic book collection. We worked, we're both college kids working at McDonald's, and we both into comic books, and he's like, hey, I'm trying to downsize my collection. You want to take a look? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'd love to take a look. And I looked through, and he had all the different series of the Venoms, and I'm like, yeah, I'd love to buy these. We made a deal, and this is the one that really stood out for me because Separation Anxiety. And you're going to hear us, when I went and read this, like, this was like video game galore, like all the advertisements, but we'll get to that. Spider-Man Venom Separation Anxiety was a game that I had for the Super Nintendo whenever I was a kid. I was a Spider-Man fan through the Fox Kids TV show of Spider-Man, and I can't remember if it was birthday or a holiday or good grades, or I can't remember how I got the game. Maybe I just read it all the time. I can't even remember at this point, but I played the shit out of Spider-Man Venom Separation Anxiety, and I was just enamored with this game. I mean, looking back on it now, it was just kind of your typical Super Nintendo, and there was a Genesis version too that I played. Nintendo or Genesis side-scrolling beat-em-up where you get to play as Spider-Man or Venom, but like I was just enamored with this game. It was such a, the world, like the imagery was very dark, especially for like a Spider-Man game, which, even though it went in very dark places, was still a very bright sort of book, because it's had Venom. The music was very dark. It was like this techno beat, and it was all like really, I don't know, just definitely at least check out the soundtrack. If you're kind of over old video games, especially, like I said, kind of the old school side-scrolling beat 'em up, at least you owe it to yourself to look up the soundtrack to this game. But that game just enamored me, and there were like, they would kind of essentially in like the in between the levels of this game give you the cliff notes of this series, and you kind of you play Spider-Man or Venom, and I'd kind of, or if you had 2 players, you could play them both and just do all the ass kicking. But yeah, it was just, you get the cliff notes, and there'd be all the villains, and they're, the way they just kind of, worked in the comic art, and like all the different symbiotes. There was like almost, it was a game for, kids to adults before it was ready for everyone. There was kids for adults, or kids to adults rather, and it was kids to adults, but there's like, especially like looking at the images of some of the other symbiotes, you're just like, I'm not like, I wasn't scared, but I was like, whoa, this is different than Spidey on Saturday mornings on Fox. But I kind of knew the Cliff Notes version of the Life Foundation and the which was also in the Venom movie, but you know, I knew kind of the cliff notes of that and kind of knew who the villains were and kind of what happened, at least, you know, from playing the game so much, kind of like the arc of the game. And then whenever I finally bought these comics, it's like it just kind of made everything sort of come full circle. So, yeah, this is a very interesting book. I'm going to do my best, because this is a you know, kind of a harder cover, and books, I'm not sure it's worth any life-changing money or worth a whole lot of money at all, but sentimental value is great on this one, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to put it flat down like I would a regular paper cover, so maybe a little hard for me to show you the inside of it, but I'm going to do my best. And yeah, let's take a look at something that not only was big for comic books for me, but big for video games. It's Venom Separation Anxiety, and let's check it out. Pretty awesome looking cover here. I mean, that's the card stocks. I mean, you can kind of like feel the bumps with everything. It's a sweet cover. Unfortunately, I'm just warning you now, it might be kind of harder to get some shots, because you got to be, and especially because even though I don't know how much this is worth, a lot of sentimental value with this. I got to be really, really careful. Yeah, it's going to be really hard to kind of keep this as flat as it once was, but, you know, Game Day 94 NFL cards, and you know, there you see Eddie Brock at the Life Foundation being very, very delicate with this. This might be the quickest skim we've done, just because I don't really want to put too much wear on that binding, but you know, they have him caught up, and they're showing the story of how they captured Eddie, and you know, it'll come back here. Yeah, it's going to be difficult. I apologize for this, guys. Plastic coating, though, on the pages is nice. Not all comics had that in 94. You can see more of it. You know, this was kind of... It was really cool finally buying this, ironically, as an adult, and it just made all of the, another Genesis ad. So many of these give me so many great... Even though I wasn't a Genesis kid, just these really, like, in-your-face Genesis ads were the 90s, you know. I was a SNES kid, but... Yeah, I just kind of... I always thought that the Genesis always looked like more badass, but I stand by the fact that I enjoyed the SNES more. Sorry. But I can see the Genesis was good too, and I got to play it. Let's see more of the dialogue with capturing Brock to separate him from the rest of the symbiotes. You know, Venom. Badass shots of Venom fighting Spider-Man, kind of in the memories there. You know, covered up just the right spots so they can still sell this at Toys R Us and at Walmart without just blatantly showing Eddie's penis there. Whoop, come back there. This is very difficult to hold this one open. This is by far, like I said, the quickest skim, because I don't want to put too much wear and tear on that binding. Oh man, it is hard. This is the problem with the cardstock cover, especially one that's been like kind of locked up. And speaking of SNES, I had the original Top Gear, not the Alien 3000 Top Gear. I had the one that was essentially just like IMSA racing, but yeah, had many hours with the original Top Gear game, just like the original Separation Anxiety game. You see the rest of them, all the different people you would fight in the levels of that game. My first exposure to knowing who any of them were was from, again, like I said earlier, this... Rereading this and just the knowing what my introduction was to this story, you know, very, very 90s video game centric. Everything. More badass scenes there. Like, Venom was kind of the, you know, like, I mentioned the X-Men in the 90s was very gritty, but like, you know, if you kind of want a little, like, the grittiness mixed with, like, a slight twinge of horror, you went with Venom just because of all the different symbiotes and monsters he fought and stuff like that. Scream there. She always scared the shit out of me whenever I was younger. Especially like having to fight her. It was just, like, freaky. Freaky as fuck in that game. Bullpen bulletins. Getting a good shot of my futon more than the comic book this week. There, yep. Now Eddie's out. Eddie's being tortured by the symbiotes, the other symbiotes. And, well, that was part 1 of this series. Eddie's Clubhouse. Like I said, horror and all this, but then they have like a really, really like cheesy Eddie's Clubhouse. So like, whatever. And then, since wrestling is a big part of this channel, this is cool. This is an advertisement for the WWF Raw game that was on Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Game Boy, all of them right there. But what I think is funny is they're using the Raw is War logo here and saying Raw is War. And this game came out in 1994, so this was before Monday Night Raw was rebranded as Raw is War, which was kind of the the start of the WWF's transition into the Attitude Era from the New Generation era. Was whenever they moved from the Monday Night Raw to calling it Raw is War, in kind of the midst of the Monday Night Wars there. And I just think it's funny, because eventually, when I see Raw is War, I think, like I said, the transition from the cartoony, family-friendly era to the, more DX and Stone Cold Attitude Era, that would be in full swing in 98 and it got rebranded Raw's War in 97. I just think it's funny they have a Raw's War logo with like all the New Generation people. There's Yokozuna, there's Lex Luger, there's Razor Ramon, there's Doink the Clown, there's Diesel, like everybody who I associate with the WWF during the kid and family friendly New Generation times, essentially on what would eventually become the symbol of their Monday night program during the Attitude Era. So, a little sidebar for any of the people that follow this channel for wrestling content. Kind of a nice little double dose. I got to talk about a lot of different stuff in this edition of the Collection Comic of the Week, and that was Venom, Separation Anxiety, #1. You kind of got a little bit of me talking about everything. I talked about video games, and there's lots of video game advertisements. Looked at comic book lore, and even at the end you got a little bit of wrestling. So, yeah, I got to talk about a little bit. This is kind of like an ultimate episode. Just got to talk about everything. So that was first part of this book, and yeah, it just it helped bring a lot of things full circle, and didn't really understand what separation anxiety really was in any sense of it back when I was 6-7 years old playing that game, but now I kind of know what separation anxiety is, and it kind of seems how they separate him from the Venom symbiote. Now it definitely makes a lot more sense after I've read this book. But yeah, that was the first part of a story that spawned a video game, and several other things in my fandom of Venom and just nerd culture. Do you also own that book? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share, subscribe for more content from all walks of geek culture, as you have learned. Comic books, pro wrestling, gaming, anime, everything. Follow me on my social media pages. Facebook.com/AthleticGeek89, Twitter @Athletic_Geek89, Instagram @AthleticGeek89. And if you would like to help this channel out financially, hit me up on Patreon, patreon.com/AthleticGeek89. But than that, I'm out. Y'all be cool. Later.